Swim check 1, 2. Bike check 1, 2. Run check 1, 2. I think we're ready. Let's try this. Welcome to the Try Beginner's Luck podcast, a podcast where we explore the sport of triathlon from a variety of perspectives to help beginner triathletes on their journey. I am your host, Mashonda Shines. Well, hey, y'all. Welcome back to another edition of Try Beginner's Luck. It is Juneteenth, and so happy Juneteenth to everyone out there. For those of you who don't know what Juneteenth is, Juneteenth marks the day when federal troops arrived in Galveston, Texas in 1865 to take control of the state and ensure that all enslaved people could be free. The troops' arrival came a full 2.5 years after the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. Yeah, 2.5 years. People were still enslaved because they didn't know that they were free. Juneteenth honors the end of slavery in the United States and is considered the longest running African-American holiday. So, happy Juneteenth to all. And for those of you who, it's now a national holiday as of June 17th, 2021. Maybe that makes me a little emotional in some ways, but ultimately, I'm really grateful for it. I'm really grateful that as a Black woman from the South, who might be 3 generations or 3.5 generations removed from slavery, is here today and able to create space in a sport that is still working through and overcoming diversity challenges and issues. And I think it's a beautiful thing that we get the opportunity to see the progress and how far we've come. And with that, I met an amazing woman at the beginning of this year. When she approached me at Endurance Exchange, I immediately felt the energy and the vibrance coming from her and deeply resonated with a lot of the things that she was saying in our conversation. And one of the things was, wow, like you have this energy, and you see me getting really excited and I'm trying to like, that I want to see, like I'm taking over a race and I would love to see how we can work together. Honestly, it took me by surprise because that has never happened to me before. And as we talked more and more, I was like, yeah, I really do want to figure out how to work with Kym because I think it's important and she gets it and she understands it. And I just appreciate what she stood for. But she's a mom. She's a triathlete since 1997. She's a wife. She's a race director. She's an endurance sports coach. She also wants to see diversity in sport, particularly for low income and BIPOC people, which aren't necessarily the same thing. Kym works for the YWCA, and their mission alone is eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. Kym is returning back to the YMCA, and that's why this year is her first year as race director for the YWCA's Women's Triathlon. Yeah, which is already sold out. What? Yes, it's already sold out, and it's just June. Okay, sorry, shameless plug there. But if you still want to give, you can still do so, and we'll be sure to put the information where you can donate or give to the YWCA in the show notes. But with that said, I want to bring to this audience Kym Zest, who lives in Minneapolis, lives near the George Floyd Square, and is in the fight to help to eliminate racism and do her part. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Try Beginner's Luck audience. Miss Kym Zest. Kym, welcome to the Try Beginner's Luck audience or podcast. Look at this. You know what? It's after work and brain is like pew, 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 pew. How you doing?
Thank you. What a fun intro. Thank you for having me, Mashonda.
Thank you for having me, Kym. Like, really?
Oh.
Listen, I just be thanking you. I like, getting an opportunity to meet you and, talk to you. It was like we immediately understood and spoke the same language. And you being what are you guys called? A Midwesterner? What
Yeah, Midwest.
Midwestern? I'm
Yeah.
Southern. We had not similar challenges, but similar challenges, right? In different ways. And so I just appreciated your approach and appreciated the boldness that it took, to come and chat with me. Uh, because sometimes people will wait until later to speak to me, and it just meant a lot. And so I just wanted to say thank you. And I appreciate that.
Well,
And thank you for
thank
giving
you,
me an
but
opportunity to like come into your space in triathlon, the YWCA, thanking them as well for this opportunity to be able to do what I love. So thank you. And I'm gonna shut up.
of course. I'm so excited that you're coming to our race. Um, and I guess I'm surprised to hear that my approach to you was new. I can't like and that they wait even longer because I waited until the last day of extra like I waited until I did not feel like I was really quick on there. I saw you uh on so it's a 3 day thing. I saw you Friday and I was like, ooh, but I didn't approach you until Sunday afternoon, just hours before we're all leaving. Um, but I'm
Yeah,
so glad I did. I'm so
yeah.
glad I did.
And to that point, I just want to say sometimes timing is everything, and I just appreciate it. Like a lot of times, in speaking for myself, when you're hosting something, it can be isolating a bit,
Mm.
right? Because you're doing something and everyone else is there with similar kinship, and they are able to network in a way in which maybe I don't necessarily fit in. Being a networker, like that's my job, is to weave people together. I can sometimes feel like, oh, do I belong? I know I do, but it's just different, right? And so I I'm just always grateful. I never take any opportunity for granted, and just always grateful. And I think it's important to showcase because this is my lived story as I am growing in this sport and growing in different capacities. These are the things that I take with me that I hold as mine.
Yeah.
And what I remember and what stand out opportunity was when you spoke to me. And so that meant a lot to me. I think I probably even journaled about it. That's
Oh.
how that's how important it was to me. You know, like I wish I could go up to another woman of color in this sport to say, "Hey, you got some pointers, you got some this." But it's like carving out a space for myself. And so, you know, people aren't always open to sharing things. I do have, one mentor, he's a little older, and so it's not like being in the mix of everything. And I just want to say thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so glad. And, I guess in terms of like that isolation, I mean, I think that's kind of why I'm in the role I'm in now within triathlon because I've been doing triathlon since 97. I have a lot of experience, but I've spent, I would say, up until now, feeling very self-conscious, never feeling like part of the in crowd. never like feeling like I had like a triathlon family or that I just always feeling like I didn't quite fit in, which is just really strange because I've been doing triathlons since before there was chip timing. Like you know, my first triathlons, I mean, like, right? Like, it was before results were posted online. Um, and so, yeah, and my dad is a coach. I feel like in a lot of ways I should have a lot of pedigree. Um, but I always felt like the odd duck among, and whether it's as a woman or as a woman of color or being lower income, not having the fanciest gear, the newest tech, the nice bike. All of those things led to me not feeling like I really fit in. And uh, pre-pandemic, I had been slowly backing away from triathlon, and just really developing other interests in all sorts of ways, but also just sort of coming to like a well, maybe there's a maybe the trail running crowd is gonna feel like a better fit.
Right.
Maybe this crowd will feel like a better fit. Um, and when I got my current job as race director for the YWCA Women's Triathlon, and I decided to go to the USA Triathlons Endurance Sports Exchange, I just really came into, can I swear on this podcast? Yeah, okay, I can swear. I'm just gonna like, fuck it. I don't I don't care that I don't fit anymore. I'm just gonna do my thing and be myself and ask tough questions and and sort of stick it to them like, really, what are you doing for diversity? So yeah, that's, I can't even remember where I started with that, but there you go.
Well, well, it doesn't matter where you started, it matters where you finished. And you finished that, you were just going to stick it and you're like, F it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I am just going to be me and ask the tough questions and do the thing. And honestly, I came to that same conclusion this year. And maybe that's why we've had it was like an instant bond, right? It's like, I'm me. I'm not going to be, I'm me,
Yeah.
right? Rough around the edges, but yet still refined, and I appreciate that. So thank you for showing up as you, because when we show up as ourselves, it gives people the freedom to be themselves.
Yeah. And I think it makes everyone feel more welcome,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what, even if they already fit in.
Right.
Um, I think everyone feels a little more at ease and a little more, everyone takes a breath.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, when I show up feeling like, F it, whatever, like, here we are.
Mm.
It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so when you said you've been in triathlon for so long, I wanted to add, you've been in triathlon even when I was in high school.
I was in high school.
Well, there it is. So let's
Yeah.
talk about it. You got your start in 1997.
Yep.
What level were you in 1997?
Well, I think I recently put together some like triathlon trivia for my crew of people, and part of it is just remembering, I'm gonna pull it up, how young the sport of triathlon is.
It's only
I
like 45, 44, no, 48 maybe.
okay, so
I don't know. It's in his 40s.
yeah,
Triathlon is in his 40s. Let's just
the
put it that
first
way.
official triathlon was, this is Google. First official triathlon was held in 1974 in San Diego, and then 4 years later was the first Hawaii Ironman, like really unofficial. Um, and then it wasn't an Olympic sport until 2000. So the thing is that I started in triathlon when I was 15, because my dad had been doing them since I was born. So my dad got in at the very, very beginning of triathlon. And I talked to I talked to several people at Endurance Exchange, but had triathlon been in a different place when I was coming up in the sport, we would have had very different trajectories. But
Mm,
when I started the sport at 15, it wasn't an Olympic sport. There was no pipeline. It certainly wasn't in college sports.
mm,
Uh, I mean, I was competing at 15, but I didn't have any competition. I literally would podium and get first every year, but that's just because there was no one in the under 19, the under 20 category.
right.
There was no competition. And of course, now there are kids triathlons and the sort of the teen junior divisions, and there is junior Olympics and there's Olympics. I mean, it's just a really different scene now. So when I started triathlon in 97, I came from a competitive swim and competitive run background, and like I know how to ride a bike sort of situation. And
Mm,
I did well just because I could swim and run well. Although it's really good that I could swim so well because I swam maybe 10 times the necessary distance because I didn't know lake swimming, like zigzagged all over the place. um, but yeah, that's the world of triathlon was really different in 97. And I would have loved to have the opportunity to compete at a higher level if I had been given the opportunity in high school or college.
mm. S- I know you probably don't have any regrets. It's just like a wish, like I wish this was available. But I feel you have an opportunity now to give this sport to those in a position like you. And so maybe what are some steps that you're taking to provide that opportunity to other youth to be able to have that opportunity?
Um, well, you never know which kids are, I mean, going to have potential in an elite sense, and it doesn't really matter. That's how I feel anyway. You just want to give kids lots of opportunities, and when it comes to an elite pipeline, that's where USA Triathlon really steps in. And what I know that's what they want to make sure that they have those opportunities and they're developing those, and I think that's great. I personally feel like my role has always been to give kids a solid foundation as like people and as athletes, and that if they end up loving triathlon, great. If they end up loving cross country skiing, sure. Whatever it is, I just hope that they have a good foundation of sort of health and movement. Um, I remember years ago, I was coaching kids, oh, I don't know, early 2000s. And one of the kids and parents, actually, I'm telling one story, but it has repeated itself many times. Kid and a parent tells me, "Oh, this coach said I have a lot of potential for." In this case, it was tennis, but I've heard it for so many other things. This coach really wants to recruit me. And I was like, yeah, that's because you're a really great athlete who's just really coachable. Like you've developed a lot of good fundamentals as an athlete and as a person. Of course they want you. The question is, do you want to do that sport? Because any coach would be lucky to have you. So anyway, that's my little soapbox about youth coaching right now. Oh, and I'll say that I did in my early days of youth coaching in the early 2000s, and there were some really great youth triathlons. I did coach kids to do their first triathlons. I think the first one was 2003 was the first time I coached a kid to do their first triathlon. So now with the YWCA Women's Triathlon, just last winter, I sort of piloted us, just I think we had 4 kids to do a spring and indoor day camp, triathlon day camp. I think it's great to have youth triathlons, but if it's just a youth triathlon, it relies on having parents and other adults in those kids' lives who know triathlon. So we need to have opportunities for kids to learn the skills and not even have it the pressure assumption that they're going to do a race. So having training opportunities right now, my capacity is sort of one-off day camps and not an ongoing team like structure. But the idea is that having places where kids can get more confident with swimming, go past learn to swim, that is not about being a competitive swimmer. Because right now I feel like primarily it's learn to swim and then competitive swim track, but that there are other ways to swim. And getting comfortable with biking on roads. That's obviously a big liability issue, but it's a big accessibility thing as well. So having youth have the opportunity to learn some of these skills and then the potential to put them together in triathlon, I think that's really key, and that's what I'm working on building.
I'm here for it. And if you saw my facial expression go like in the middle, it's something about do not disturb that wasn't working. And my brother kept calling me on repeat. And I'm like, if it's with do not disturb, do not disturb. Anyway, so hopefully we won't have any more hiccups. So,
No worries.
but
I didn't
yeah,
hear it.
good. Because that's one of my biggest challenges with recording and then having that ringtone in the back. And I'm not a superb editor, but it just makes it more
Yeah.
difficult. I think what I appreciated what you said during, talking about um, telling this, I'm just going to call them a student, person, youth, that a coach would be lucky to have them because they're coachable. How many times do people tell them that versus, oh, you're talented? Coachability is a real thing.
Yeah.
And I think we focus a lot sometimes on the talent, but anybody with talent can do something, but somebody who's coachable can be exceptionally great.
Yeah. And that they're coachable and that they just have good athletic foundations.
Right.
Um, just the basics of having the basic physical capacities, but also the concept of training, the concept of working out, understanding working a skill in a drill versus embracing the discomfort of improved fitness. And oftentimes that is just like the foundations of being an athlete are not taught. I mean, I would say they're not just taught to youth, they're not taught to adults. The difference between skill building and fitness building,
Yeah,
uh, and just having that understanding and understanding that process.
I agree. So 1997, you get the opportunity to do your first try. Let's walk through what that looked like or what that was like for you back in 1997, which was 27 years ago.
Yeah, I stopped counting a while ago. I stopped being like, yeah, I've been doing triathlons for X number of years. I've been like 97, whatever. Do you do the math? Um, I mean, so I was a beginner, and the triathlon as a sport was still new-ish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I mean, the first years I did triathlons, I did them in a swimsuit and put on running shorts, and I had just, I mean, this is funny. The first races I did on the first bike I ever got that was like an adult bike. Like I'm done growing and here is a real bike. Um, I still have that. It's in my shed. as we speak. I still use that bike, but now I use it to tote around a toddler. Um, so yeah, so and again, I did the swim and it was a mess. Again, I was a really good swimmer, but I was a really confident and fast swimmer, but I was not a good triathlon swimmer. No idea what I was doing in a lake. Like, where are my lane lines? Um, yeah, so those were the first years, and then eventually my dad thought I was ready for a better bike, and by better, he gave me the bike that he had given my mom when they were courting. It's a 1970s Italian steel frame bike that is still to this day my race bike. Um, that I've upgraded components on, but the frame is again still hanging in what I'm using because every time I'm getting serious about being competitive, all my money ends up going to race fees and just all the other things like, oh crap, my tri kit is worn out and I need a new one, and those cost a lot of money. So I've never managed to invest in a true tri bike. Um, but that's what I started racing on, and it just has upgrade. It's just, over the years, components get upgraded. Um, yeah, I mean, and I've been around since before chip timing, um, and watched many races evolve. Also, but I admit that I've never been a triathlon nerd. I have lots of clients who geek out and know all the names of all the elites and pros, and watch all the triathlons, and that has never been me on any sport, really. Um, I've done a lot of my local races. I go to all I know my local scene, and I've done races beyond Minnesota. But uh, yeah, I love the grassroots of track. I love personally being competitive. I mean, there are times where I am like, I'm gonna podium. I'm gonna I'm gonna PR at this race. I love being competitive, but in my own little sphere.
I get that. Um, so you currently ride on the steel bike from the 70s. You've upgraded the components. So can you walk me through when you say that you've raced on it for X amount of years? What type of races has that steel bike gotten you through?
All of them, including an Ironman.
Hmm. Okay. And so, in thinking about barriers to entry, triathlon is very resourceful rich. And it sounds like you figured out how to quote unquote try on a budget.
Yeah,
Hashtag
on a
trademark
shoestring.
on a
Yeah.
shoestring. Hashtag on a shoestring. Um, so for someone who's trained and have ridden on your steel bike for events up to an Ironman, what has that been like for you? And hear this question: mentally having to overcome seeing all the expensive bikes in the transition area and perhaps zooming past you, or you could be zooming past them, but hearing that sound of the drive train as it goes by you and it's whoosh. I'm just saying, help
The
us
aero
help the
components
people.
and those beautiful wheels.
Wheels, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, and this is definitely one of the areas that I am really working on and want to influence in the world of triathlon is recognizing that it's okay not to have the fanciest. It's really not necessary. You really don't need the fanciest stuff. Um, and that it's not an all or nothing, because I sometimes see like, oh, it's okay if you show up to your triathlon with a bike basket and streamers and like, but the message I've always gotten is it's okay, but sort of a pat on the head isn't that cute. Like there's no like, and that person's gonna do that like one time. And like that there's more of a spectrum that like you can take yourself seriously as an athlete and you can be a serious triathlete and you don't need to have the top of the line everything, you know. And for a very long time, it's only recently that I can be like, I say with pride that like this is the bike that I've been racing on and I'm still racing on. Because for many, many years, I felt really, really embarrassed that I didn't have a better bike, or a better helmet, or I don't know, the bazillion other things. I remember the summer I was training for the Ironman I did Beach to Battleship, North Carolina, the year before Ironman bought it. So just, and I specifically chose an independent race. I wanted to do a community owned race. Anyhow, that's another story. But the year I was doing that, I was training for that. Minneapolis has a great athletic culture, and the chain of lakes and all the lakes and rivers and creeks, they're all interconnected. So if you do enough training, you start seeing the same people or running and you just happen to run into people. And I was on one of my very long runs, and I happened to just converge with other people wearing tri gear, and we just happened to be at the same pace, and we did many more miles together just by accident, just happened to work out. And they kept telling me about all the new gadgets and watches and things, and they were like, "Oh, you're gonna," and at this time I didn't have any sort of smartwatch. I was just using Strava on my phone. I had just an analog, just a regular analog watch. My watch did nothing fancy. Nothing at all. It told the time, and that is it. Um, and I mean, at least I had a smartphone and Strava. But they just keep telling me about all the things that I should have or that my husband should buy me, as if my husband had more money and was like withholding from me or something. It was ridiculous. It was, and they were both really friendly, but it just really ingrained how much I was like an imposter, that I didn't belong, or that, yeah, it just, you can be a really good athlete without any technology. And actually, these days, I'm still sort of like recalibrating my athletic life postpartum, even though my toddler is 2.5. It's a journey. um, and there are times where I have been like, okay, 10-minute workout. Okay, this is not really working out, but I'm doing something. And I either my watch is dying, or I don't have my watch. Like there's some reason that it's not getting logged, right? It's not on my watch and it's not going to Training Peaks. And I have to remind myself, this has been my mantra lately, my body logs it even if my watch doesn't. That's, you don't need anything other than your body to be whatever kind of athlete you want to be.
Hashtag drop my pen, hashtag drop the mic, hashtag amen.
Yeah.
You know, I appreciate you sharing this because I think more people will resonate with your story than I can even imagine, especially newbies, right? And I've fallen subject myself to wanting the fancier things, but it's like practically like, does that make sense? And how much better is that going to make me with in my ability? Like I gotta know where I am. Um, and the struggle is real. And I think having those hard conversations and being practical makes it all the better. And yes, as things are, you're able, do it, but don't go in debt for it.
Right.
You
And I mean,
know,
if you have the money, fantastic.
right.
I mean, no shade. I on anyone with all the new fancy stuff. My goodness, it's fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely go for it. Um, but I just hope that more people don't have so many years of feeling that I did, which is just feeling
Yeah.
kind of embarrassed, struggling to feel like I belong, struggling to feel like I couldn't really take myself seriously because I didn't have the good equipment. Um, yeah, you don't have to feel that way. You can you can be awesome on any equipment.
You can be awesome on any equipment. I love that. And still, my body logs it. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And I think, even sometimes when you think about the watches are great. It's a great metric, right? I have a watch. I like to look at the metric. But this year I did something very different. I downgraded something because I was focused too much on the little ribbon things that you get to say how much you've increased and improved. And I was like, yeah, for this particular training block, I need to focus on what is your body giving in this moment. Now, to say that I'm not going to go back to it, I can't say that. I might. I probably will do it as soon as this thing is over.
Yeah.
But for the time being, I needed to focus because sometimes having a mental shift in your mind, you got to take away the distractions. And if you find out that you're looking at all the metrics, but your body is still exhausted and it's not telling the truth about how exhausted it is, it's pointless.
I mean, there's so many things you're like, you should trust your body more than you should trust your watch. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I had I coach I don't coach a lot of clients these days because I need to be race directing. But one of the clients that I've been coaching for, I don't know, a decade or so, last summer, I coached through a tech detox month. We had a month of tech detox when it comes to when it comes to training. It was
Mm.
very interesting. And this client, you know who you are. I know you're listening. Uh, um, and we had a week where it was like you can use your watch, but no training peaks. You don't get to log it in your, training, but you can use your watch. And then you can have a training plan, but dumb watch. You can only use your watch for time. You don't get to use the watch to, you can mark that you did the workout, but you're not going to get any stats on that workout. And so we had variations each week. Um, we had variations of sort of tech detox.
Mm. That already
Um,
sounds painful. Sorry.
yeah, right. No, and especially for triathletes, people who gravitate towards triathlon generally are the type A. They love data, they love improvement, I mean, the people who gravitate to and stay in triathlon generally like triathlon because of all the different components and all the different stats. And like, you mean I don't get just one race number? I get like six race numbers. Like I get more data. Fantastic. So triathlon, regardless of your income level or gear, generally people are like that, but it can also be a black hole. So you gotta keep it in check.
Well, with that said, you want to help also with the diversity of sport, and that's different. And you say that there's a difference between low income and BIPOC,
Yeah.
and they're not necessarily the same thing. Your, can you share with us the why?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, obviously increasing sort of diversity and equity and inclusion and accessibility, all of the letters. Um, Working on any of these things in any space is multifaceted and complicated, and there's so many factors. There are two things that happen in triathlon, but also everywhere. regarding attempts at reducing racism or really, increasing diversity at an event. One is scholarships, but the assumption that the people, that's the assumption that the BIPOC people don't have the money to do the race, which is not necessarily the case. Um, so while I'm not saying that money isn't an issue, just as we could say that reparations uh, could be due to all people with any, history of enslavement. So, regardless of where they've landed now, we could say, so it's not to say that scholarships don't play a role, but there are plenty of wealthy people who identify as BIPOC who aren't doing triathlon. Money is not the issue for them, anyhow. So, the solution to increasing diversity in triathlon or in all spaces cannot just be, well, let's make some scholarships. Like, and I'll also say, this is not your initial question, but the other big frustration I have is what I've just called the chicken and the egg problem, which is, oh, how do we get more people of color to do triathlon? Oh, well, it's about representation. So they just need to see people of color at triathlon. But you got to make sure that the people of color who are at triathlon don't feel tokenized and excessively highlighted to make a race seem like it's more diverse. But that's how you get diversity. It's just a chicken and egg. How do you get diversity? By having diversity. Like, um, and I don't know what the perfect solution is. But I know that we have to try more than those two. It's not just about representation, and it's not just about throwing money at the people. Um, so yeah, I've got a variety of things that I'm working on this season. This is my first year as race director, so I'm already at the point where I'm like, and that's going to be a next year issue. 2025 goals. I mean, but having you come to our race, to MC our race, is part of it. What do we do for the people of color who show up, and how do we signal to them that they're in the right place? How do we signal to, especially in Minnesota? I mean, how do we signal to a lot of our white, cisgendered, heterosexual people at our race that this is a space that we are prioritizing the comfort of not them? So I think that's always really tricky. And of course, the blanking on the author, but the White Fragility book and many things about that. I think we have a lot of people who have been traditionally in the majority who are well-meaning. They're at our race. They understand the mission of eliminating racism and empowering women. They're not against it. But how do we help them actually get there? Like, how do we help them, redirect the focus and recognize that if we're making a different population comfortable, that might make them a wee bit uncomfortable. um, so, man, I can think about like 10 other stories, tangents on this topic.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a work in progress.
Yes, it always is.
Making changes to continue to change, right? Like, and you're doing the work. Speaking of, let's talk about this race coming
Yeah.
up August 11th. Tell us
Yeah.
more.
Oh, yeah, that's
It's your cue. That's your
more.
cue.
Okay. I was waiting for a more specific question. Tell us about the race. So
What can people expect? I mean, the race is sold out.
the race is sold
So
out. We sold out in a record 37 days, I think.
Yeah.
And we sold out, and our cap was 1,200 participants, which is not our highest cap. The race was founded in 2008, so it's got a pretty, I mean, in the world of triathlon, it's been going for a while. A lot of races do not survive that long. And I'm sure across the country and certainly here in Minnesota, a lot of races folded post-pandemic, did not survive the upheaval. So it's been going since 2008, and I think the highest participation year or the highest, registration year was 1,800 in 2019.
Wow.
Uh, what else do I say about the race? It's amazing. It's really fun.
Tell us what
Last
to expect.
year,
Like, what is the swim like? I hear the swim is in a beautiful lake.
I mean, it's in a lake in Minnesota. We've got a lot of them.
Like, I'm new to Minnesota. I've never been there. So let's paint the picture for someone who might be looking for races for 2025.
Ah, yes, races and I'll also say volunteers. Um,
Mhm.
we have a lot of racers, and I mean, I expect we will sell out in 2025 as well. I'm just gonna throw, and I think on that note, a huge drive for me is to make this event a really fun for everyone. We want the racers to have a good time, but clearly we have a good reputation. Our racers like this race. Um, but my goal as well is to make sure the spectators are having a great time. Like if we are a women's race, we want to be as family friendly as possible. Um, sorry, I'm not starting at the swim, but I'm just going to family friendly as possible. This year we're starting having a sort of a family friendly zone. We've always had again, this is about inclusion. We had a breastfeeding tent for a very long time. We're renaming it to just the baby care tent because everyone can take care of babies and feed babies in all different kinds of ways. um, so we have a baby care tent. We're going to have a sort of loosely fenced in area for people with young children with activities and things to keep them occupied because, if a parent is doing the race and the other parent is with the child, there's a lot of time to kill in triathlon. And so to have
Sure.
some games and activities and an area in which the parent can maybe sit down and realize that their toddler cannot get too far away, um, is one of the things that we're doing to just be more spectator and family friendly. We want to make sure the volunteers are having a fun and good time, that they feel like that their job, that their role in supporting the race is clear and manageable, that they have the opportunity to enjoy the amenities and the experience of being at the race without actually having to train. That's one great thing. You can sort of like participate in a triathlon without actually training for a triathlon. You can volunteer. So that's a huge
Yeah.
aspect because I think a lot of people don't recognize how much it takes to put on a triathlon. Actually, I was just listening to one of your podcasts, can't remember now who, but about about the behind the scenes and what it takes to put on a race
Mm.
financially, but also just manpower. So our
Sarah
race
Hayes.
was, I don't know, I think it might have been Gabriella. I know that's an old one.
Oh yeah, Gabby. Yeah. Okay. Yep. That could be Gabrielle. Yep.
Anyhow,
Okay.
we need, sort of somewhere between 300 and 500 volunteers.
Mm. It's a lot of
Uh,
volunteers.
a lot of volunteers. It's a
Yeah.
lot of volunteers. We had sort of we had under 200 last year. And the racers felt it. We all felt it. The volunteers felt it. The racers felt it. So, how I can support the race is so much more than just the racers. Of course, I want to support the racers. And we're
Yeah.
making changes and improvements to increase the safety and the fun for all the racers. But it's so much more than that to put on a sustainable race. Uh, so I'll just back up to the swim. It's in beautiful Lake Nokomis. I guess it's all relative about beautiful. It's a city. We're in Minneapolis. um, Minneapolis is a good medium-sized city, so it's a city lake in the city. It comes with the pros and cons of having a triathlon in a city as opposed to in a suburb or in a more rural area. Rural areas can also just be so gorgeous. But we have the city issues of traffic, and we have to watch for E. coli and other pollution related issues in our location. But it's Minneapolis as a city, for being in the city, it's so green, it's so lush. So
Mm.
like you're smack in the middle of the city, but there are trees everywhere. It is green everywhere. Um,
I feel like I'm
so
in love already.
yeah, and it's a really friendly lake for beginners. So the race is geared towards beginners, but we're not about like just the first timers. I love the racers. I love the people who do triathlon and then get sucked in and they've gotten bitten by the triathlon bug. But a lot of our racers are either first timers or this is the only triathlon they do. They don't necessarily see themselves as triathletes. They see themselves doing the YWCA women's triathlon. Um, and that's their race. They do it with their family. This is their tradition. And so the course is really amenable to that. So the lake is a relatively small lake. It's a relatively warm lake. We have the two distances. We have the super sprint, just a 200-meter swim, and the sprint, the 400-meter swim. It's very well supported, obviously lifeguards and boats, but also volunteers holding pool noodles that are in the water for people to take rests on, as much as we want. And again, we really just try to have as many volunteers as possible, line the course with, with volunteers. Um, and then the bike is mostly on Parkway. So actually almost all of it is on Parkway. So it's on the road, and it's a fully closed course. So there's no car traffic on our bike course. There is two-way bike traffic. So it is an out and back style course, but that makes it easier to support and easier to spectate. And then the run is essentially around the lake. It's a very friendly, and it's a mostly flat race. It is a very nice course. Both the super sprint and the sprint are very nice courses for the beginner or the casual athlete.
And there you have it. So if you're in the area or you're nearby and want to come over to Minnesota by way of the Twin Cities, come volunteer.
Yeah,
And then next year, race. But at
totally.
least you'll be able to volunteer this year. So we're doing a call to action for volunteers. So if you want to come out, please do. Kym, this has been absolutely amazing. I appreciated our conversation. So, what final thoughts would you give to anyone doing their first race?
Ooh. Um, I mean, if they're listening to this, fantastic. I mean, everyone doing their first race is coming from such different backgrounds, so it's so hard to give general advice, but I think the general advice is to not underestimate it. Do the research. And again, if they're listening, you're already doing great. It's the people who show up on race day and have done zero research, that are the ones that I'm like, maybe next year. Um, and this goes for people on the organizing side as well. It's not a single sport event, and you can't treat it like a single sport event. So if you have experience doing any single sport event, just recognize that triathlon is a sort of unique, or multi-sport is unique in the challenges it presents in combining sports.
Yeah.
So do your
Yeah.
research.
It's a real thing. Well, Kym Zest, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on the Try Beginner's Luck podcast and for being such a gracious guest with and just laying the hammer and telling it like it TI is. So I appreciate that. But I can't let you go before we ask some rapid fire questions. So let's get right to it. Favorite artist, favorite music artist?
Ah, that is. Oh, um, I'm gonna give the quick answer I gave at one of my strength gyms lately. They were talking about, music, and it was quick rapid fire, and I was like, "Does the Bluey soundtrack count?"
Is that a kid soundtrack?
It's a kids show. I got a toddler. I don't really.
Ah.
I have no good answer for music
And the
these days.
only reason why I know that is because this weekend, I think I might have put them in my playlist because we had a kids race at the Armed Forces Cycling Classic. And I didn't think that I was going to do music, but luckily I brought my computer, and being prepared helped save the whole 2 days, right? And so I had some kids music. So I was like, is that a kids song? That's the only reason why I know. But
Yeah,
okay.
no,
Or kids.
I just like the soundtrack to Moana.
Moana. Well, what is your favorite song when you're working out? We'll do favorite song then for you.
I'm actually gonna say, like, I generally listen to podcasts, and right now I either listen to a podcast or I'm not listening to anything because that has been a barrier to me getting out the door and doing a workout. Like, if
There,
I have to cue up music, it is just another thing standing in my way of a workout. I've just been so many times these days. I'm like, oh, I don't have my headphones. I don't have my music. Whatever, go.
go. Let's go. All right. Are you a transition minimalist, Goldilocks, or kitchen sink hoarder?
I started out as a kitchen sink hoarder, and I now am a minimalist for sure.
All right. Um, if you couldn't do triathlon tomorrow, what would you do?
You mean if I couldn't do triathlon?
Mhm.
Oh, you mean as a sport?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, as a sport, as a sport, as a sport. I'm assuming you also mean that I can't swim, bike, or run, like separately.
If you could not do triathlon, which is swim, bike, run,
Yeah, yeah,
what would
yeah.
you
If I
do?
could do
Clearly, this
that,
is a hard question, Kim. You're like, I don't know.
it is really a hard question. Um, if I could, let's just say dream world as well. I would love to get into more like rock climbing and mountain climbing, but Minnesota makes that challenging.
Okay. All right. Morning workouts or evening workouts?
Evening.
Best recovery tool or method?
Sleep.
Huh. Okay. Bucket list triathlon race.
Oh, I haven't looked into this in like over 5 years, but I've heard of triathlons where they actually equalize the distances for swim, bike, and run.
Hmm.
So it's based off of the marathon, and because the typical Ironman is really imbalanced. So when I did mine, I had a tide assist, but still, I mean, I was swimming for an hour out of my 13-hour experience. So the idea is that they change the distances so that if you are theoretically equally good at all three sports, you actually would do all three sports for equal time, which really increases the swim distance and lowers the bike distance. And I would really love that.
All right. Dream training partner, alive or historical?
Oh man, wow, dream training. Wow, what a super unprepared for that one. Um, hmm. I mean, I'm sure I had a better answer if I had more time, but I would love to I think it'd be really fun to train with some of the less developed community, like the communities that train in a lifestyle way. I'm thinking like the Tarahumara that were in the book Born to Run,
Yeah.
and other communities. Um, Generally in Africa, South America. It's hard to find these communities these days. But I think that would be really life-changing to be able to
Know that.
live and train that way.
Race shirt, keep it for memories, or wear it proudly?
Oh man, I keep some of my race shirts. I give most of them away.
Okay. And final question that we don't let anyone leave the Try Beginner's Luck podcast without answering. Do you pee on the bike or get off and take a proper pee break?
I pee on the bike.
All right.
I'm
There
I,
you have it.
yeah, yeah. I guess the rock climbing and mountaineering might have given a hint, but I'm a dirty outdoorsy girl and I have no qualms. And I do
Same.
not want to have to stop.
You know how to take care of business and keep it going.
Yeah.
Well, I am so thankful for you. We appreciate you. We have this saying, whenever you try beginner's luck, you always win. And that is so true. So just keep trying. We do have a segment on YouTube only. It's exclusively on YouTube called Ask a Coach. So be sure to tune into Ask a Coach. We have 2 resident coaches, Maria Simone with No Limits Endurance Coaching and Lloyd Henry with On Point Fitness. And so we want to make this sport as well, just kind of accessible, even from a coaching standpoint. So be sure to check that out. And if you haven't downloaded us, subscribe so you can regularly know when we tune. Although we are coming down to a end of our season, we have plenty of episodes, actually 100 and probably 20 by the time this airs, episodes for you to listen to. My name is Mashonda Shines. I'm Mashonda Miles, also known as Mashonda Shines. And I think we're out. Peace. Bye, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and listening to this episode. We need your help so we can continue to try at TBL. So for more information on where you can find and subscribe to this podcast, visit www.trybeginnersluck.com. And don't forget, whenever you try beginner's luck, you always win.